Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wave Collage, a complete video magazine. Today is our first presentation of the magazine, and we begin it through an academic lecture series. In this opportunity, we chose education and women empowerment as our first topic. Today's topic is Savitribai Phule and her legacy. On behalf of Wave Collage, I, Abhishek Roy, would like to introduce to you the topic and the speaker. After the talk, there will be a brief live session of discussion, question and answers. Viewers are most welcome to write their questions in the chat box. The entire program would be uploaded in YouTube and the link would be provided thereafter. In 1855, an essay named Mang Maharachya Dukri Sai, which means about the grief of the monks and Mahars, was published in a reputed journal named Dhanodaya, based in Ahmedabad. This document is considered historic. It is perhaps the earliest piece of writing by a Dalit Indian woman. Muktabai was studying in a girls' school established by a Phule couple. Their names were Savitribai and Jyotirao. The essay gives a moving description of the condition of the untouchables and atrocities they faced from the Brahmin community. The education bestowed upon these girls were not mere alphabet teaching. It kindled the mind and intellect of an oppressed girl to write a critical assessment of the society she came from. But who were these Phules? Who was Savitribai? The life story of Savitribai Phule was perhaps the most fascinating and extraordinary history of 19th century India. Savitribai Phule, born on 3rd January 1831 and died on 10th March 1897, is considered the first woman teacher of the country who fearlessly fought against gender, caste, and religious discrimination and championed the cause of emancipation and education of women. She and her husband Jyotirao Phule, who was known as Mahatma Phule, belonged to a Gardiner or Mali community. Jyotirao Phule first coined the term Dalit for the oppressed in India. They pioneered the anti-caste reform movement, eradicating untouchability, fighting against severe caste oppression more than 6 decades before Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. In 1848, Savitribai opened a school for girls in Pune. It was one of the first schools for girls in the country, as Calcutta's prestigious Bethune School was founded a year later in 1849. She actively continued her work on various repressing social issues all her life, till plague cut short her life in 1897. Despite having such a remarkable contribution, Savitribai's name was not much in mainstream historical discourse for a very long period. Today, Dr. Shraddha Kumbhojkar from Pune would enlighten us on the legacy of this great woman. Dr. Shraddha Kumbhojkar teaches history at the Postgraduate Department of History at Sabitribai Phule, Pune University, Pune, India. Dr. Kumbhojkar completed her graduation from Fergusson College, followed by a master's and a PhD degree in history from the University of Pune. She also holds a master's degree in Sanskrit. Her areas of specialization are modern South Asia, historiography, nationalism, memory studies, and Dalit studies. She taught at Nehru Institute of Social Sciences, Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit for 17 years before joining the History Department of Savitribai Phule Pune University in 2013. She teaches intellectual history of the modern West, theory and practice of history, history of modern India, history of West Asia, history of East Asia, and the modern world. She has worked on interesting research projects like modernity and popular culture in the late 19th century Maharashtra and communalism and textbooks of history. She has published 2 books titled Nationalism, Literature and Creation of Memory and edited 19th Century Maharashtra, a reassessment. She has contributed in various journals of repute. She has also presented research papers in various national and international seminars and conferences and have organized the same.
Very good evening. Uh, Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to share my thoughts with this crowd of young and enthusiastic people who want to know about the history of Indian modernity. Um, right at the outset, let me say that I'm here not because I'm some kind of a historian or because I'm um, some university professor, but because I'm a person who has received something which can be called as a legacy from the person about whom we are all eager to know, Savitribai Phule. As you know that I also work in a university which is entitled Savitribai Phule Pune University. I work in the Department of History there. Uh, Why is it that a university in the 21st century is named after somebody who did pioneering work in the field of women's education, in the field of education for the deprived classes? Why is it that the society today wants to remember this lady called as Savitribai Phule? I hope that at the end of this lecture, which I'm hoping to continue for about 30 to 40 minutes, I hope that at the end of this lecture, some of these questions might be answered. Those questions which are not answered, of course, we will have a Q&A session later on so that we may exchange our thoughts, we may exchange our doubts, ask questions, and in general know more and share our insights about the life of this incredible, wonderful lady called as Savitribai Phule. Let me just try and share my screen so that we can have some pointers regarding the dates and stuff in front of us. I hope my screen is visible to you all. Yeah. Um, this is a mural showing Savitribai as in the role of a teacher, not looking very old as against the students who are pretty much also young girls. Savitribai, and sitting next to her is Fatima B. Sheikh, who are teaching a class of a few girls, but teaching them the basic skills of reading, writing, arithmetic. So this is something about education. This is something about interacting with people, sharing of ideas, which I think is a very appropriate topic as far as the lecture that we are having today is concerned. Wave collage, as they have already discussed with us, they are planning to have this series of academic lectures wherein young people can connect with each other, interact with each other, and know more about various academic disciplines and various topics of current relevance. Thanks again for inviting me here. And let me begin with the presentation, which is entitled Savitribai Phule and Her Legacy. Um, yeah, it was about 190, almost 200 years ago that Savitribai was born in a village called as Naigaon in Satara district of Western Maharashtra. She was born in a family which was a poor peasant family. And at the age of around 9 years old, she was married, as was the custom in those days. She was married to this person called as Jyotirao, who was barely 4 or 5 years older than her. So, around 1840, Jyotirao Phule became the husband of Savitribai Sasani, and the marriage resulted in her name being changed to Savitribai Phule. So, at the age of 9, this girl gets married with Jyotirao. Uh, Jyotirao was a person who was remarkable young man living in the 19th century. He was already interacting with people belonging to various castes, various classes, various religions, and he had already started his own education in a mission school Scottish mission school in Pune. As a result of which he had these ideals, he thought that he could share his knowledge, he could share his insights, he could really be a partner as far as Savitribai is concerned. And he began the journey of educating Savitribai around as soon as they got married. So the journey began not only for Jyotirao, but it began also for Savitribai because it was a strange thing for a, a girl of her age and a girl who belonged to not the Brahmanical high caste, but belonged to the so-called lower caste of gardeners uh, to take any education whatsoever. Education in the form of reading, writing, arithmetic was a completely unheard of thing as far as Savitribai and her caste, girls from her caste were concerned. But Jyotirao, being Jyotirao, he said that you are my partner, and if you are ready to take education, then I will impart education to you. And the journey began for both of them. Obviously, it wasn't a very pleasant or a very happy kind of a journey for both Savitribai as well as Jyotirao. They faced severe opposition to this idea of Savitri, especially getting educated. As a result of which, both of them were evicted from the ancestral house and they had to start afresh, which in a way became a blessing in disguise, so to speak, because Savitribai and Jyotirao were forced to um, create a household of their own, financially independent and independent in terms of other responsibilities of the household as well. But this probably must have nurtured the bond further as far as Savitribai and Jyotirao were concerned, because the relationship obviously seemed to bloom into in various directions. Uh, the poetry of Savitribai will come a little ahead in this lecture, but both of them definitely shared a uh, very vibrant kind of a relationship, which was mutually rewarding and complementary and not dependent or not hierarchical, to say the least. The picture that one can see on the right side is a picture of a plaque, which is created in the form of a book. You can see leaves on the right side and on the left side of this plaque. Why is this picture created in the form of a? Why is this plaque created in the form of a book, and what is the relevance? Uh, this is a plaque which is a commemoration of a girl child who died because she had uh, expressed desire to take education around 1880s. This is a girl who was called as Kashibai. She was a daughter of a very close associate of Jyotirao Phule, and she had not done anything wrong, really speaking. She and her father just wanted to educate her. So Kashibai would simply walk from her home in one part of Pune to this school for girl children, which was being run by Savitribai and Jyotirao Phule and Fatima B. Sheikh and other teachers. And Kashibai was simply a small girl of around 8 or 9 years old. So she would walk from her home every day to the school. What happened was the society around was not as progressive as one would have liked it to be, and they felt that it was not good for a girl to venture out of the house and take education, so on and so forth. And they tried to dissuade Dr. Vishram Ramji Ghole, the father, from the fact that his daughter was taking education. And Dr. Ghole felt that it was a harmless kind of a dissuasive, persuasion, harmless kind of a demand. So he ignored the demand of his daughter being, taken out of school and so on and so forth. What happened was the society in 1880s was not as accommodating, as accepting, as open as one would have liked it to be. and as a result of which some people who were reputed to be relatives of the Phule family, they poisoned this little child called as Kashibai in 1880. The girl died because of this poisoning, and Dr. Vishram Ramji Ghole erected a small fountain in memory of this girl called as Kashibai in 1880. So this plaque is a commemorative plaque of a girl child who lost her life simply because she had committed this crime in the eyes of the contemporary society, the crime of getting herself educated. This I've put right at the beginning of my presentation so that one knows that Savitribai uh, venturing into the field of education of women, what kind of opposition she must have faced. There are all sorts of stories, there are all sorts of anecdotes that are shared, which tell us that when Savitribai used to go from her house to the school, which where she and Fatima B were teaching, people used to throw dung balls and people used to throw stones at her, and she was, thrown filth at, and poor thing, she had to carry a change of clothes with her, a change of sari with her, all the way to the school, so that the dirty sari could be changed in the school. She would wear the good sari in the school, teach the children. Then after the school, she would wear the dirty sari back again, and then come back home facing all these dung balls and stuff from the orthodoxy in the heart of the city called Pune, where I come from today. This is the kind of opposition, this is the kind of orthodoxy, this is the kind of closedness of mind that prevailed in the second half of the 19th century, which makes it all the more important for us to realize that Savitribai's life was a missionary kind of a attempt to bring about education, to bring about popularization of women's education. And that really is her very, very important contribution to India's modernity. So Savitribai and Jyotirao began their journey of this education of girls, and we can see an original photograph here of Savitribai and Fatima Bai sitting here. You can see the one with the chiri, the horizontal kumkum is Savitribai, and sitting next to her is Fatima Bai, Fatima B. Sheikh, who was her neighbor, friend, and co-worker. Fatima B and Savitribai both used to teach girl children. So these two little girls who are sitting down, these two girls are students who were learning in the school that was run by Savitribai and Fatima B. Another lady who's standing at the back seems to be a lady who's a widow, because as was popular as was a custom in those days, widows, especially widows of the higher castes, were not expected to, they were not supposed to wear colorful saris, nor were they supposed to wear the kumkum, and moreover, their heads were tonsured. So you can see these ladies with different fortunes, ladies with different abilities in one photograph here, Savitribai and Fatima B, the two girl children who probably had a bright future after they took education from the school, and the lady who's young, of Savitribai's age, but who was unfortunate to have lost her husband, and who was unfortunate to have been born in the caste where widows did not deserve to be respected. That's the photograph. Savitribai started her school in Mr. Usman Sheikh's Wada, that is a house, around 1848, even for adult learners. 1849, school started for girls, Shudras, Ati Shudras, that is, people coming from various untouchable, supposedly untouchable castes, and their girls, they were being educated under the tutelage of Savitribai and her colleagues such as Fatima Bishek. Around 1853, as Savitribai realized and her husband Jyotirao, the more they went into this field of education, the more they interacted with the people, they realized that the roots of social problems ran deeper into the family structures, into the patriarchy, into the inheritance laws, as far as the society around them was concerned. So, Jyotirao and Savitribai realized that why is it that women, we've just seen a lady who's standing at the back in the photograph, why is it that these women were so disfigured? Why is it that they did not get the respect that any human being should have got, simply because their husband was dead? And they realized that this was primarily because of the patriarchal mindset, which felt that a woman, once her husband is dead, she should not be producing any children because those children will claim a share of the family wealth. Hence, it was all this disfiguring, all this de-beautification of these women was an attempt towards making them less attractive for males outside the family, so that these women would not have children from other male members of the society. Convoluted kind of thinking, but that's how the logic went in those days. So, in spite of all these inhuman and de-beautifying, absolutely un unacceptable practices as far as widows are concerned. In spite of all these things, Jyotirao and Savitribai realized that many widows were deceived, many widows were, they simply felt that, they didn't have contraceptives also in those days in their under their control. So many widows would simply give birth to children, and because it was not a socially accepted practice to have children when your husband is dead. So many widows would simply kill those infants, and infanticide was a major issue in those days. Jyotirao Phule and Savitribai Phule realized this, and then they started this foundling home for children of widows. So that Jyotirao had actually pasted pamphlets all across Pune on the walls of various houses, saying that if you are pregnant and if you want a safe delivery of your child, and if you don't want to kill your little infant, please come to my house. I will help you with your deliveries, and then once the child is born, you can leave the child with us, and you can simply go back to your house without the child, so that you don't feel pressurized to kill or get rid of the child. The child survives, and you also can go back to your house. This level of outreach or reaching out to the people who are facing the consequences of unfair rules of the society. This kind of outreach is something which can happen only if a social worker, only if a person is absolutely sensitive to the needs of the society, absolutely understanding in tandem with the pulse of the society. And thankfully, Jyotirao and Savitribai both were just that. They completely knew what kind of society they were living in, and they knew that they had to, nobody else was going to do it. So they had to start somewhere by starting these various initiatives of schools, of foundling homes, so on and so forth. Another problem as far as the society in and around Pune at this time was concerned, obviously, just like India today also, was caste. Even if I'm using a smaller word called as problem, we know, thanks to Dr. Ambedkar's academic contributions and his understanding, his whole argument about caste as a system which controls and regulates most of the aspects of our lives. Now we know that the system of caste was something which was all pervasive, and it was so inhuman as far as the 19th century Pune and Maharashtra in general are concerned, that the untouchable people in the days of water scarcity around 1860s, 1868 to be precise. In the days of water scarcity, untouchable people were not allowed to take water from a commonly owned source of water. So there were only certain wells or only certain places where the untouchable people could go and get fetch their water. Other places, even if they had plenty of water, these were denied to the untouchable people, simply because the society, that is the higher castes, believed that the touch of the untouchable people was polluting. It was not good for them. What happened was in Pune around 1868, there was water scarcity, and many untouchable people had to walk long distances just to fetch their daily supply of drinking water. Uh, Jyotirao Phule realized this, Savitribai Phule realized this. The relationship between women and water is absolutely, it has been emphasized and studied by many scholars, including Anne Feldhaus. Um, so, Jyotirao Phule and Savitribai, what they did was they did not simply express dry sympathy, but they offered that the little well inside their vada, which you can see here in the slide. Vada is an enclosed kind of a house. So the little well, which had plenty of water, it was opened up for the use of untouchables by Jyotirao and Savitribai. This is something, a gesture which probably for us today it may not carry the same meaning as it carried for the people, the untouchables of the 19th century. Imagine yourself being denied a glass of water when you are thirsty simply because you do not belong to the right caste. And here we have the example of untouchable people being forced to walk day in and day out for miles together just to fetch their daily supply of water. So Phule, the couple Phule, both of them, simply opened up their well for drawing of water for the untouchable people of Pune around 1868. Now, this is something that is absolutely a revolutionary act, because it not only underlines the feeling of empathy, the feeling of human dignity that the Fules nurtured in their minds for the untouchable people, but it also tells us that these are two people who are ready to go against the rules of the society prevalent in the customs and norms of those times, to help people who they are convinced are as equally human as they are, even if they may be termed as untouchables. So, this courage of conviction, this empathy, this ability to act, even in the face of adversity, even in the face of the society going against you, is something that is completely unique as far as Jyotirao and Savitribai Phule are concerned. And both of them kept working hand in gloves with each other, kept working in complement with each other. And nowhere one could say that this is an initiative by Jyotirao and Savitribai doesn't really have seem to have anything to do with it, or she is only in a supplementary, only in a secondary role. Never. Both of them um, were involved equally actively in all these activities. May they be the opening of schools, opening of the well in their house, or opening of the orphanage and the foundling home. Um, Earlier, we mentioned about the relationship between Jyotirao and Savitribai blooming into flowers, and I was indicating the nomenclature, the name that was given by Savitribai to her collection of poems. And here you can see the front page of this collection, which was published in 1854. So Savitribai was, one can say safely, she was the earliest poetess of modern Marathi language, and she composed all these poems and compiled them together uh, in a collection called as Kavya Phule, like a bouquet of poems, bouquet of poems. It also has probably an intended pun because the surname is Phule, which is related to flowers. And here she is saying that my poetry or my poems are like flowers. So some kind of a word play is also intended probably by Savitribai. Um, the schools were flourishing, not flourishing, the schools were functioning beautifully. They faced regular inspections by the educational inspectors of the British regime. They were supported by the local people. It's important to underline here that even if Jyotirao and Savitribai belonged to the caste of gardeners and they were working for the untouchable children, they were working for the girl child of various castes. The support that they got from Pune people was amazing in the sense that people belonging to all sorts of castes supported the initiatives taken by Savitribai and Jyotirao. We have literary evidence, we have evidence from the records of the Satyashodak Samaj, which came to be established in 1873, a society of truth seekers. Um, the members of this Satyashodak Samaj, the members or the friends who offered them a place to run all these schools and stuff, people who offered to teach in the schools, they came from various castes, right from Jewish people, Muslim people, Christian missionary friends, people belonging to the Brahmin castes, people belonging to the caste of scribes, Prabhu, Shenvis, people belonging to the untouchable castes who had already taken education with the help of Jyotirao and Savitribai. All sorts of people who came into contact with the Fules, they kind of were galvanized into with this cause of education for all, and as a result of which the number of schools increased, which were run by Jyotirao and Savitribai with the help of all these associates, including Dr. Vishram Ramji Ghole. The number of schools increased, the responsibilities increased, but also this opened up further doors as far as the understanding of Indian society was concerned for Jyotirao as well as Savitribai and their colleagues. This is something which can be seen from the documents which are related to the establishment of the Satyashodak Samaj, which says that we are not going to discuss anything related to the political issues here, but we are here to seek whatever may be the truth as far as the Indian society is concerned. There are various tracts, various little books, little pamphlets that have been composed, published by Jyotirao himself, certain poems by Savitribai. Then there are little tracts written by and published and printed and published by various Satyashodak Samajist people. All these texts, all these manifestations in the print media point towards the fact that this is an organization, Satyashodak Samaj is an organization wherein people belonging to various genders, people belonging to various religions, people belonging to various castes and classes have come together to realize the full potential of human beings, potential of human beings. Satyashodak Samaj was such an attempt which began its journey in 1873. It's important to note again and underline it probably that Savitribai was absolutely involved right from the beginning of the Satyashodak Samaj till after Jyotirao Phule's death, as far as the Satyashodak Samaj is concerned. Though many a times her name is taken only as if she is an associate, as if she is a leader of the second cadre as far as the social work activities are concerned. and that's not right, because one can see that she's contributing, she's paying the vargani, that is, she's paying the fees, membership fees of the Satyashodhak Samaj. She is taking part in all sorts of discussions. Sometimes she is an office bearer also of the Samaj. So Savitribai here is not just a female consort of Jyotirao Phule, but she is an independent lady who is an active member of the Satyashodhak Samaj, which started in 1873. And evidence of this can be found in descriptions, wherein the 1893 um, congregation of the Satyashodhak Samaj in 1893 in a place called as Sasford witnessed that Savitribai delivered a speech in the gathering. This mural is obviously not a contemporary mural, but an artist's expression of the way she might have spoken in front of all these people. But it's quite eloquent. It's quite evocative in the sense that it expresses, it manifests, shows us that this is how things might have happened long ago in 1893, when the Satyashodhak Samaj, followers of the Satyashodhak Samaj, had gathered together for this congregation, and Savitribai delivered a speech, fiery one at that, exhorting people to act, not just preach, but act in accordance with the principles of the Satyashodhak Samaj. And what were these principles, and what was Jyotirao and Savitribai's agenda as far as the practical aspects, as far as the Satyashodhak Samaj is concerned? First and foremost, they felt that the slogan that they gave was Satyameva Jayate, that is, it is truth which prevails, nothing else prevails. Secondly, the idea behind Satyashodhak Samaj was that Sarvasakshi Jagatpati Tyala Nakocha Madhyasthi. So Jagatpati, that is the Lord of this world, and a God, if you like, is Sarvasakshi. He or she can see everything and anything. And hence, if God can see everything, then we do not need a middleman between a devotee and God. So middlemen are to be removed from the socio-religious scene as far as the society in the 19th century is concerned. This was the ideology of Satyashodhak Samaj. When you speak of taking away the middlemen, obviously it means that you have to create rituals which are of a novel nature. Satyashodhak Samaj people, I have earlier also mentioned that these people published pamphlets, little tracts, texts to let its people know what are the ideal, what are the acceptable ways of conducting various rituals, such as weddings. We know that in India, when two people get married with each other, it's really two families which are coming together. And Jyotirao and Savitribai were absolutely aware of this fact. And hence, Jyotirao wrote a book called as Sarvajanik Satyadharma Pustak towards 1890s. And he has outlined the small little rituals which are expected to be conducted when all sorts of ceremonies are held in a Satyashodhak family. So when the wedding takes place, when somebody is entering a new house, when a baby is born, when the naming ceremony is taking place, all these various sanskaras, the various occasions in the standard life of a householder, for them Jyotirao has written meaningful evocations which are to be recited if you are a Satyashodhak Samaj follower. So if the Brahmin was not there to recite the Sanskrit verses for conducting, or officiating a wedding ceremony, then who could do this? Because the Satyashodhak Samaj principle was that we do not want any middlemen. Now you'll remember that Jyotirao Phule and Savitribai had encountered a lot of opposition from the Pune Orthodoxy back in the days when they had started schools. So much so that there were two people who were sent to assassinate Jyotirao back in 1860s or even earlier. One of these, both of them changed their mind completely as soon as Jyotirao Phule noticed them standing with their, the weapons in their hands and standing in the middle of the night in his house. And Jyotirao asked them, "What is it that you want uh, entering into my house like this at such a late hour?" And they said that we've been promised 1,000 rupees each for killing you. And so Jyotirao goes, he doesn't, he's a cool man, doesn't say bat an eyelid. He says, "Okay, go ahead and kill me if you are going to get 1,000 rupees each. It's not a bad bargain at all. You know, in in place of one life, many lives from your family will be saved. So go ahead and kill me." This kind of a approach towards life, this kind of a attitude towards the happenings around him, is something that was absolutely mm, it was surprising as far as the both the assassins were concerned, and they completely were disarmed, and they changed their minds, and they said, "Tomorrow onwards we are not going to be the hooligans that we were earlier, but we are going to be your followers." One of these was called as Dondiram Namdev Kumbhar. The other one was Dondiba Rode, who became a colleague of Jyotirao as well. But Dondiram Namdev Kumbhar was a remarkable man, in the sense that belonging to the caste of potters, once Jyotirao Phule brought about the change in his mindset, Dondiram went all the way to Kashi, learned Sanskrit, learned the Hindu Brahmanical rituals, came back here, and then he said, "Okay, we don't need any Brahmins anymore to officiate these ceremonies. I know the meanings of all Vedas, I know the meanings of all religious texts, and I can help you if you are interested in conducting the ceremonies in this fashion." He also obviously was not a kind of a counter revolutionary who was trying to reintroduce Hindu Brahmanical ideas to a society which was going on a path of emancipation, as shown by Mahatma Phule. But Dhoniram Namdev Kumbhar, he started officiating ceremonies which were called as Brahminless ceremonies. May they be weddings, may they be other ceremonies, but he would tell people that this is the meaning of such and such ritual, and you can conduct it yourselves. There's no need for any Brahmins or any priests to claim a share of your wealth simply because they can recite a few Sanskrit uh, chants. So this was a very important contribution as far as Satyashodhak Samaj was concerned, Brahminless weddings and other rituals. This is also a period when one witnesses a great famine as far as the Western Maharashtra is concerned. Around 1875, 76, 77, even 78, Satyashodhak Samaj, including, of course, Savitribai and Jyotirao and Dondiram Kumbhar and their other colleagues, they provided relief to farmers in different places. And one can see this, of course, is again a modern painting, but still one can see that food being cooked and provided to people belonging to various castes, creeds, and backgrounds, because the famine had brought about such difficult times upon the rural masses of Western Maharashtra. So 1870s, one has historical evidence that Savitribai herself, even if Jyotirao Phule is involved in some other work in Pune, Savitribai goes all the way to the rural areas where all these camps are being held. She takes stock of things, what is needed, a perfectly a managerial management kind of a contribution she makes. So how much food grains are required? What are the legal difficulties? What are the difficulties in terms of the social acceptance of such an activity where people belonging to different castes sit together and eat. So Savitribai, with the help of other colleagues, find solutions to all these problems, all these issues, and successfully manages to conduct not less than 52 food centers, as depicted in this picture, uh, when there was this big famine of 1877. Uh, After this, she really takes off, the lady Savitribai, because she moves around without Jyotirao by her side. Jyotirao is doing some other important work in Pune. Savitribai is in Otur, or she goes to different places and manages beautifully on her own. So this is something that is completely a novel thing as far as 19th century is concerned, because many a times one sees women reformers, but they work more closely in proximity with their male partners. And Savitribai is somebody who is absolutely independent, and the husband is in Pune, she is in the countryside and conducting beautifully all these different activities which she and her husband and their colleagues felt were necessary for the betterment of society. 1890, sadly, Jyotirao Phule passed away, he died. But Savitribai continued the work undauntedly. She did not give up her social activities as was expected from a widow of respectable stature in the 1890s. She did not give up her activities which involved going out of the house, which involved traveling, which involved interacting with different kinds of people. She felt that it was just right for her to continue the mission that she and Jyotira had taken up upon themselves. And she continued working for education, for health, and for social reforms. 1897 is the period when, and you can see here, a British official trying to trying to communicate the uh, rules and regulations to the people as far as the epidemic is concerned. This government official, while he is speaking with the people, he is backed up with a heavy group of soldiers, group of his military might being displayed in the form of his officials, perhaps. So, health is not something which was trusted by the indigenous people in the hands of the British in 1890s. They felt that the British did not do justice to or they did not do enough, they did not have good remedies as far as the plague was concerned. So there was this, in today's words, there was this trust deficit between the British and the common masses as far as the city of Pune was concerned. Savitribai had raised, and Jyotirao, they had raised a son called as Yashwantrao. Raised in the sense that he was adopted from a widow who had given birth to this child. So he was really a foundling whom Jyotirao and Savitribai had adopted. This Dr. Yashwantrao had become a doctor, medical doctor now in 1890s, and Savitribai she requested Yashwantrao to give up his government job and set up a small hospital in and around the city of Pune so that he could serve the society which was more in need as against the military soldiers of the British Empire. So Yashwantrao had started this hospital, and Savitribai was physically carrying patients who were suffering from the bubonic plague in 1897. She would carry people in, like an ambulance does today. She would carry people who were too sick to move or who were in need of help to the hospital which was being run by Yashwantrao Phule. Unfortunately, in one such trip, she contracted the plague virus, and 1897 Savitribai passed away because of the very disease which she was trying to fight, which she was trying to ameliorate, plague. That does not mean that Savitribai's work stopped, because we know that 1890 Jyotirao Phule passed away, but still his work was continued by Savitribai. And it's a proud thing for all of us here to know that the legacy of Savitribai continued even after the death of both Jyotirao and Savitribai. Uh, how did the legacy continue? And I have these three points to make as far as the legacy of Savitribai is concerned. One is that women and people started working towards building of institutions instead of having done efforts at the level of individual persons. Institution building is something that was um, that became a focus thanks to the efforts of Savitribai and Jyotirao Phule. Institution building, in the sense that the way Jyotirao had started the Satyashodhak Samaj, the way he had established all these schools for education, similar institutions came up in the period after 1890s, and one can say that this was definitely thanks to the legacy left behind by Jyotirao and later Savitribai Phule. Institution building. Then, secondly, it's important to know that knowledge creation is an activity which gets respect like no other activity, because creation of knowledge is something which is considered as extremely important in all societies. May they be colonial society, may they be a caste society, knowledge is very, very important. Savitribai's legacy is that she herself was a creative writer. She herself was one of the earliest critics of Mahatma, that is Jyotirao Phule's writings. She would read them, she would offer her critical comments, so on and so forth. But she also inspired other people to take education to improve and to make full use of their potential and to contribute in the processes of knowledge creation. The example for this can be seen in the case of Dr. Rakhmabai Raut, who later on became the first practicing lady indigenous doctor in modern India. Dr. Rakhmabai Raut was working in the 20th century, 2020th. But here one can see that this lady has written a research paper called as a case of myxoma operated upon at the Women's Hospital, Surat. So this kind of academic contribution by studying the tumor of this girl, lady called as Asha Bibi, a Mohammedan woman aged 60, she was admitted, and Dr. Akmabai and her assistant surgeon probably they conducted a thorough examination of the lady's condition, and they wrote this research paper, which is a very, very concrete contribution to the field of knowledge creation. So Rakhmabai is, or here you can see the picture of Tarabai Shinde's text called as Tri Purush Tulana. There are essays by a girl called as Mukta Salve. There are other people also who have felt that Savitribai is an inspiration for all of us living in modern India. So Savitribai and her colleagues, they created and they initiated this culture of knowledge creation, which is a lasting legacy as far as Savitribai's life lessons are concerned. Finally, a misunderstanding of a woman when she works in the public sphere is that she's trying to compete with men, or she's trying to prove that she's better than men, or she's trying to counter what the men have already done. Savitribai did nothing of the sort. She worked in tandem with her husband, not only with her husband, she worked in coordination, in collaboration with a number of colleagues from the Satyashodhak Samaj, and not in opposition to men. So even if many people understand that when, I mean, it's their understanding that when a woman tries to work in the public sphere, she's trying to go somewhere in a different trajectory than the man. Savitribai's life and legacy tells us that it's not always required. One can work hand in gloves with your colleagues, your friends, your husband, your your co-workers, such as Fatima Bishek. Uh, beautiful friendships she developed. And I think that these are the points which tell us a lot about what we as millennials or people living in the 21st century, what we have inherited from this remarkable lady called as Savitribai Phule, who lived in the 19th century. I think I'll stop here with this list of references where one can find a number of details, very good interpretations also, some primary source materials such as the book by G.P. Deshpande. Um, with this list of references, number 3 and 4 are very important. Professor Harinarke is a scholar who has devoted his entire lifetime to the study of Phule's ideology, both Savitribai as well as Jyotirao. So his book is extremely important. I have shared a paper written by Professor Harinarke with the organizers here, so that if somebody wants to know more about Savitribai's life, they can consult this paper. So thank you all for having invited me here, having listened to what I had to share with you as far as the life and teachings of Savitribai Phule are concerned. Thank you.